Chris.
All right, well, I think we can begin. Let me introduce to you our 317 TAD 2 course. They've been working the last several weeks on a dark ride attraction, an IP-based dark ride attraction. So that was a part of the assignment, is that they were to use IP. So just make that clear for you. And I think I'll hand it over. I don't have too much to say other than they've been working really hard, and I really stressed them using everybody contributing their personal skills, their personal talents to the team, and getting something together that uses everybody's best skill sets to create something great. So I saw a dry run last week, so it should be pretty good, and I'll hand it over.
All right, thank you so much. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Paige Billion. I was one of the writers on our story team, and I want to introduce you all to our presentation, Animaniacs in Cartoon Chaos. As a part of our project here with the Animaniacs in Cartoon Chaos, we did a lot of things as part of this project, and we're going to take you through almost everything. Moving on, we're going to walk you through our story, our ride vehicle and track design, location plannings, our operational plans, guest experience plans, how we got here with our blue sky and conceptualization, our inspirational imagery, along with some administrative and product management considerations. So to move on to that first spot, imagine, if you will, for a moment with our high concept here. You have been invited to an early screening of an episode. And when you go, well, what if you found yourself dragged into the episode? Join us along with the Animaniacs as they hunt for a better joke in their test screening and bring you along for the ride. With that, we start in our location of the WB Animation Studio. It's a fairly nice animation studio. As you're going to walk through the queues, you're going to interact with some items, which we'll talk more about later, and make your way to a sign that says viewing room, where you're going to head onto our vehicles and load onto the ride. As you begin to head into the experience, you see a viewing cart labeled Acme, as a few people introduce to you that you'll be watching this episode for the funniest jokes. The Animaniacs pop onto the screen and start telling their jokes, but quickly find not quite as funny as they'd hoped. They turn to you and say, let's see if we can find something funnier. The screen flickers, it widens, and as we spin and whirl, we pass through the TV and make our way into our first scene. As we make our way through, we find ourselves within the Acme factory, seemingly transported by the TV. We see Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner up to their old tricks, doing something wild, playing with explosives and messing around. All the while, the Animaniacs trying to prompt them for some wordplay, though quickly finding that's not quite what they're going to be getting. As we run around and we search, we quickly duck behind a rock and find something a little bit different. As we head behind this, we find Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck. And as we start trying to tell them what's going on, well, Bugs shushes Daffy, holds up a sign. It appears everyone here is not going to be speaking. As we start figuring this out and say, well, I guess we're not going to get any jokes out of this, we decide to head for another classic area. But on the way out, Wacko makes sure to give Wile E. Coyote and Daffy Duck a little present that is definitely not a barrel of TNT in a box. And as we make our way out, we hear an explosion as we head on to our next scene. As we find our way into this next area, we end up in a spooky sort of forest with the siblings around us commenting cheerily that the mystery gang has got to have some funny wordplay. As we look around, we find the team, and well, since the tunes didn't use their words, we start now trying to make some puns off of whatever's happening around them. The siblings start making some minor impressions, with Yakko imitating Fred's motions, Wacko eating Shaggy's food, and well, not finding a lovely new pair of glasses. The team starts getting a little bit annoyed with the siblings, and all this distracting them until the villain of this episode runs them off. The siblings quickly start hurrying away, and as they do, well, maybe could we check in on some other Hanna-Barbera properties? Nah, says Wacko. Nobody thinks those are interesting, as we see a familiar-looking Baron Ranger walk by annoyed in the background, as we make our way again to maybe something a little bit more modern. This time, we enter into a laboratory, bubbling beakers, wild experiments, as we find Princess Bubblegum and the Powerpuff Girls within Professor Utonium's lab. Dot quickly hurries over to find some like-minded individuals working towards these projects as the brothers start to poke around and say, well, if wordplay hasn't worked thus far, maybe we try a bit of prop work. As they start to pick up and mess around with lab equipment, well, it doesn't quite start going the best, as they start touching things, messing with things, until eventually our scientists tell them to knock it off. This, however, sets off a catastrophic reaction as we make our way to the next slide and see a series of wild events has caused an absolute disaster, causing the Powerpuff Girls and Princess Bubblegum to work to try and stop this shenanigans here, as it all starts to go wild as a big red self-destruct button got hit. As we start to quickly hurry our way out from all of this chaos into the next scene. And in this sequence, illustrated by our wonderful Alec Given, we find ourselves passing into this sort of portal again that we have been passed through each time, making our way through the TV static again, popping out on the other side in a seemingly calm cityscape. Wacko commenting, well, maybe some peace and quiet will be just what we need. As all of a sudden, Superman rockets back into a wall, seemingly thrown by a foe we have yet to see. As he gets back up and returns to the fight, the Justice League versus Starro, a mind-controlling space starfish. As this time, we whiz around trying to ask for jokes from the heroes who are, well, a little preoccupied as they make their way around trying to fight off these little stars and spontaneously getting possessed by them, as Starro is wont to do. We try and bother Batman for jokes. He grumbles. Wonder Woman's a little busy trying to subdue one of her fellow heroes. While the Flash tells a few jokes, they're a bit too fast for us to understand. The fight heats up, intensifying as the supers and the possessed fight against each other until all of a sudden Yakko yells out, "I've got it. I've got our joke." And as he does, the fighting stops and he announces, "We don't have a joke." This obviously gets some mumbling. What do you mean we don't have a joke? As Batman steps forward and says, "This isn't a joke. Do you think that's funny?" Wacko suddenly, in a quick spin, turning to the Joker, responds, "I do, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. Comedy is subjective, Batman," quoting a recent line from the Joker movie. We then spot over to Yakko in a bowler hat. He turns to Batman and says, "Riddle me this, Batman. Can you do any better?" As we now turn to our third sibling, Dot, building up with dramatic pauses and lighting. As it all drops away, and she says, "Yeah, I got nothing. Let's pack it up, guys." As the superheroes pack up their fight and amicably peel off a few starfish, as our Animaniacs and us in tow begin to head back home. As we begin making our way back through the backside of the TV, the siblings lament, well, it would have been nice if we could have found a real ending to all this, since No Joke is a bit anticlimactic. Yakko agrees, saying, "Yeah, I guess it was a bit of a wild goose chase." As we're walking past all these props back here, well, suddenly a goose walks up. Yakko pointing to it and says, "Well, I guess it really was a wild goose chase." Dot picks up the goose and chimes back in, "For nothing." The brothers look at her a little confused before she indicates the goose. "I've named it Nothing." As they laugh, turning to the audience and saying, "Well, I guess it really was," they make their way back into a sketched-in version of their episode's intro. And just before they send us off back on home, Wacko pops out of the classic water tower, yells, "That's all, folks," and slams it shut before sending us on our way to load off. With that, we're going to make our way over to ride design and track design.
Hi, I am Kara, and I'm going to walk you through the ride design for our ride vehicle here. So the goal for this was to make our guests feel like they're being transported through a portal every time they're entering into a new cartoon franchise. So what we plan to do with this is utilize the portal graphic that was created for us by Alec and implement that into the ride vehicle design with mixed use of physical applications and LED technology to achieve that sort of portal transition in between each scene. We also thought this would be a good disguise for the wheels so that it's a little bit immersive for guests entering on. Each row is elevated so that there's better viewing from each row. And then we've also considered a few safety aspects, such as the front row being low enough for someone in a wheelchair being able to place inside, which Lane will talk more about a little bit later on. And then also, since this is trackless, we will be able to have variable speeds, lots of chaos and mayhem happening in these scenes, obviously, but also being able to slow them down on a conveyor for loading for special guests that may need additional time getting in as well. And I'm going to pass it on to George, who's going to talk a little bit more about the layout of this ride.
Thanks, Kara. So here we see our map design that we created. We start with on the far right with our entrance into our inside queue, which will then rope around and then get into our split pre-shows. That will then go into the main loading area, which will have conveyor belt systems allowing for a seamless entrance and exit to the ride. And then through the scenes, there will be about 9 scene sections that will allow for the ride to transform each room from room to room. Kind of like Kara said before, we would more than likely have these transformations in between each room to allow this portal effect that Alec kind of created. And going through that, we have our throughput estimate. Since we have 12 riders per vehicle and 18-second dispatch intervals, that comes out to about 2,400 people per ride vehicle, with 7 ride vehicles in the ride at a time, and then 3 unloading and 3 unloading. This should put us at about 29,000 riders per hour. And I'm going to pass it off to the story team to talk about our blue sky and all of the guest experiences.
Hi, I'm Izzy. I was a part of the story team with Paige. And with our blue sky, originally, we had this idea to do more of like a backlot tour and kind of implement all of the different characters in it. So you have this tour guide and you were these interns at the Warner Brothers Studios, and the Animaniacs were causing all this trouble, but we decided that there's been a lot of backlot tours done in the past. And so we kind of converted that idea into this really cool portal channel chasing kind of thing, which is where our dark ride really blossomed. But this is where it really started out. And I apologize. I lost my screen. But it was really awesome to kind of work with each other as a team to really implement the original idea and work little by little into how we wanted the ride vehicle to be. As originally it was more of like this sit down kind of tour vehicle, and then it turned into a really cool vehicle designed by Kara, and that was a really fun process. But moving on to the guest experience part of it. When you're in the queue, since you are at the Warner Brothers Animation Studios, we really want it to look like an animation studio. So you have parts of it that will have interactive elements where guests can kind of make their own animations. There will be really cool art up on the wall from past Animaniacs, Looney Tunes, a lot of different characters that have been in the Warner Brothers Animative Studios before, and just really make it super interactive. And then there could also be an implementation of possibly putting your own joke in there. And we took inspiration from Disney's Mike Wazowski's Laugh Floor, which was kind of a fun idea to play off of, but we wanted it to really feel like this interactive animated studio kind of thing. And this is kind of an image representation of what it might look like. So you have these desks that have these computers that really make it look like animators have been there, kind of personalized. And then you've also got all this wall up on the art up on the walls. And you also have these screens, big ones like that kid is at, where you can actually draw your own things and kind of watch it come to life animated, which is really cool. I know I would always love to watch my animations come to life. So that would be a really fun technology implementation. But moving on, every single ride has to have costumes for the guests to kind of feel really immersed. So when I was designing it, I took Alec's really cool portal design and I took inspiration from these like textured fabrics. So I thought it would be cool to use the color scheme and this textured style to make the portal really kind of come to life on the cast members. And I also wanted to make sure that it was unisex, but if you wanted more of a feminine touch, you could have that V-neck line. And then for the males, the polo line. And I think probably one of my favorite parts is the little Warner Brothers logo to kind of help pull it all together with the Warner Brothers Studios as a belt buckle. But we really wanted to make sure we stayed true to the color scheme, but also make it fun for the cast members to really pull into the portal idea. And I will hand it off to Lane.
So I'm Lane. So here we just kind of pulled together of some kind of scenic art fabricators that do, building custom fabrications for rides and other spaces. And we chose these guys that we really like their style and their kind of cartoon look that we would really need to utilize in our ride. Go to the next slide. This here, I made a model in SketchUp to kind of make an interactive kind of little space outside of the ride, because people would like to get their picture taken with the Animaniacs and kind of be like with the Warner Brothers water tower, and just kind of like and get with the portal, and they could have other characters. Is this kind of more fun interactive stuff that we thought of, much like the stuff inside the queue. Here is our style guide we created. We just kind of went off with colors found in the Animaniacs themselves, like the blue shirt, the red hat, the little flower with the yellow and the orange, and like the orange pants. And then there's also some pinks in there. And then finding kind of the fun comic fonts and like the Animaniac style fonts is what we utilized overall throughout our visuals that'll be coming up here next. And then this is just kind of some mood board images of just showing where our minds were at when we were thinking about making visuals. And then this was created by Alec, just a really fun kind of poster wall art of kind of putting all of our IPs together and, just making a really kind of cool piece just to show off, everything that you'll be getting in this ride. And this was also made by Alec, just kind of showing, maybe you're driving down the highway and you see this, this really cool sign for this Animaniacs ride. And, you'll be yelling at your mom and dad to pull the car over now to get in there and go on it. So, that's what we were going for here. And then I created this one, just kind of more advertising, just kind of really loud colors and getting people's attention. And then I created this one as well, same kind of feel, loud colors, just have it pop like crazy visually, because the Animaniacs is about fun and mayhem and mischief. So just kind of getting everything in there and just getting people to be like, oh, what's that? And just kind of getting them to want to know more and come check out our ride. And then these I created, just for some signage, just kind of some wayfinding, and I utilized Illustrator. Created the Warner Brothers Tower, and then just enter accessibility entrance and exit signs, just so guests know where they're going on the ride. And then here is this kind of like a general kind of safety sign, just for people if they're sick, fear of heights, fear of going fast, and just kind of rider responsibility, which is kind of general for kind of fast-paced rides with action or anything in there. I believe I'll be handing it off to Sid to talk a little bit more about some graphical stuff we've created.
Hello, I'm Sydney. This is kind of like our branding. Alec created these t-shirt designs here for the rides. Everyone wants to bring that piece of that, hey, I did this thing, and I'm really proud of it. So on the next slide actually is something that I created. This is the laid out framework of an animated ad that I created. It kind of just shows like something that would like pop up either on like Instagram or Facebook, something that would like in drawing kids nowadays. It kind of like says where like, are you ready to enter the cartoon world? It has that portal logo, the Animaniacs bringing you through the world, and then it would launch into a web page that talks specifically about what this ride is about and like how it came to be. And then next, I believe I'm throwing it back to Lane to talk about a little bit of our accessibility entrances and things.
Yep. So I did the deep dive on accessibility and looked at all the ADA requirements, and we were just kind of checking out, seeing like for ride vehicles and like the load and unload area, like what is really possible. So making sure that all guests that want to come ride a ride can, because that's super important. You want to have everybody having a good time. So we just kind of made sure that our ride vehicle was able to be accessible enough for that to happen. And then the next slide just kind of shows some more visuals and this kind of basic measurements, because if you have a wheelchair getting on or around a load and unload, you can't have crazy gaps in the floor, and just like they have to have enough turn space. So we just wanted to make sure that everything was acceptable for anybody that has accessibility issues. And I'll be kicking it over to Carrie to get into timeline and some budget.
Yep. So you might be thinking this is a big project. How long is this going to take? Going to cost? And I'm going to tell you. So our goal is to have a grand opening by January 2024. So obviously we've been through the blue sky and overview concepts at this point. And there's a couple due dates that we'd like to meet along the way in order to make it to that grand opening timeline. And if we go to the next one, I'll tell you how much it's going to cost. So breaking it down just by some of the most important facets of a ride like this, design and project management. You can see there some of the show elements. I bumped this up by the recommendation of Nate Naverson last week. And the ride system is a little bit higher than it was last week as well, for a total of about $2.26 million for this ride. And so with that high note, I will close us out and say thank you so much for joining us for this presentation, and I hope that you like it.
Nice job. Nice job. So they've heard all of I might have a few more comments to add here, but they've heard from me all semester. And so Chris and Mark would love to hear your thoughts and comments.
Very well done, the story, guys. Very proud. That was very awesome. It's a good job reading that page and everyone's input on that. That was awesome. Curious about your throughput. I believe 26,000 is really high. I would love to see the numbers around 26,000 people on a ride, but that would be like a world record. Even in all honesty, 2,600 would be very, very high.
I believe it did. George, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it did go up from what we originally calculated last week. Nate Naverson gave us a different formula to follow.
Well, Carrie, you're right. You will have records if you get 26,000 people an hour in there. In all honesty, you may want to slow it down so that people spend time in the park. I mean, if you get your whole daily attendance to the ride in an hour, you guys might have a problem the rest of the day. And then the budget to me is really low. I would be interested in seeing some more specific numbers and kind of where you guys got those at. But other than that, it's super exciting. I totally saw myself going through it and getting all chaos and crazy and puking at the end, and it was great.
So before I go, Alan, do you have any comments since you're here? Not to put you on the spot, but
no. The big thing that really stuck out to me was what Mark just mentioned, like the daily average attendance of, say, Hollywood Studios is about 31,000. So you're almost your whole park capacity could go through the ride in 1 hour. But yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. I wish it could be built someplace.
Oh, and one more thing quick. If I read the calendar correct, it looks like you were giving yourself, was it like 10 months, 8 months to build that? Something like that? Production was like April in 2023 and it was done early that next year?
Yes.
You guys are totally hired any project that I ever have to do.
So love the story. Paige, you did a great job, as Mark said. I love the fact that you gave yourself a lot of leeway when it came to IP. And the reason why I say that is like, you're obviously not just sticking to Animaniacs, you're implementing all these other IPs. So you've got a lot of flexibility there. And way to be relevant, obviously, with the reboot of Animaniacs for 2 seasons with on Hulu, I believe it is. So yeah, it's fun. Yeah, I think it's a really fun concept. So I really like the idea. I love the fact that you thought about lots of different things that a lot of students don't think about. The accessibility requirements, right, was one thing. The contractors and vendors that you would use, right? Like I could tell you actually spent some time doing some research on some existing vendors that fit your style. And so I feel like that was really good. I won't hit on the the throughput thing just because it's already been hammered to death. I'll just ask Nate what equation he uses. Like, I'm like, what did you use? I'm curious. Yeah, where did you get your numbers from for the budget?
For the budget?
Yeah.
So that Sally Dark Ride thing that they gave Alan at IAPA in November, okay. I pulled everything directly from that. And okay. Then Nate Naverson said the same thing. It's very low. And I thought, okay, I'll bump it up a little bit. And so I bumped it up by like $1 million, and that's still low apparently.
Okay. Who else said it was low, Carrie?
Nate Naverson and Mark.
Oh, Nate.
Yep.
Okay, Nate said it was low. Okay.
Yep. Because last week I had it like at 1.5 million, I think.
Okay. So we can just say Sally's cheap.
Well, that's why I'm like, maybe the scope of Sally's project is much smaller, or maybe it's a couple years older. I don't know.
It could be. I mean, you got quite a few scenes in there. Mm-hmm. And so probably based on the size and the fact that you got like 29,000 people going through in an hour. Sorry, I had to say.
Hey, how long was the ride again? I don't believe you guys said how long the actual ride was. Uh-oh.
I don't know if we calculated that.
The ride is 13 seconds.
So we had the dispatch being 18 seconds per dispatch, which would probably put each scene under that. So quick math would be like 180 seconds ish.
Okay, so about a 3-minute ride, which is that's a pretty decent ride. I think, yeah, you're very, very optimistic on an 18-second dispatch. That's cool. Okay, just want to make sure about the length of the ride.
Hey, Carrie, I have some thoughts on the Sally Dark Ride.
Tell me.
Estimate. I think that there must have been more to it than that. Like maybe I can't remember what all was in it now, but I know last semester we were way under too. And we even, I think, multiplied ours by 10 because we assumed our ride was about 10 times bigger. So actually, I think our number came out to about 20 million, and it's probably still like 80 million under what it should have been.
Well, I'm
Mark,
looking.
go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking you missed a couple zeros somewhere, or maybe a 1 or 2.
I mean, yeah, I pulled up the picture just to make sure, and it looked like a packet. So I don't know if maybe there's more to the packet, but that include like technical plan and creative and all the show elements and the ride system and the labor.
So Alan only gave you 1 page of the budget.
I guess Alan did me dirty.
That's all John gave me.
Well, and to be honest, Sally and Oceaneering and stuff like that, they will have things basically a la carte sitting on a shelf where people have designed something, and you may have gotten a fire sale to go and buy that for $2 million or something, right? So it'll take them 0 time to hand that to you.
That's true.
Also, I was kind of wondering, is buying a ride like buying a new house? So you you go in and you look at the model house and they're like, oh, it's only $400,000. But then once you sign the paper and you start getting into it, then you have all the add-ons that they didn't tell you about to begin with.
It's actually, it's one or the other. So you can go to ride companies and you can say, okay, I want to purchase this ride that you've designed, and it'll be a turnkey solution. But a lot of times you will go in there and say, okay, here's the space I have. Let's design it around that. That's when you kind of get into the a la carte, and that's when you get all the different pricing and stuff.
So one question I have for you, Mark, is as you saw that there's probably like 18 different IPs in here. From a professional standpoint, like, is that a nightmare? Is that, do you have to license and pay for each one of those? Or is the fact that Warner Brothers it's their ride that it's not a big deal? Or I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you would have to work with, as long as all those IPs, which I think they are all Warner Brothers, you would have to work with them on what ones you guys would be using for sure. Kind of like Chris said, it's kind of cool because you're going to get a bunch of different people that are going to want to see it for different reasons. And not to mention, like, as you throw this into a land or a certain part of the park, the theming around that, you're not limited to just the Animaniacs, right? So you could have a Scooby-Doo restaurant, you could have, Roadrunner Cafe, you could have, the store could sell a bunch more merchandise. So there's a lot more expansion on just one IP. Tying them all together, making them work is definitely a challenge, but I think you guys did a good job kind of, merging them, which, as you would build the whole entire land out, would be interesting to see.
And
I don't think it'd be any more difficult if you did just a single IP. But now if you did multiple IPs with multiple companies, that's when you're getting into a complete nightmare where you got to explain to each of them saying, okay, Warner Brothers, you're going to work with Pixar, and then Pixar is going to work with Sony, and wait, Sony doesn't like Pixar, and then blah, 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 blah. So,
well, and that you've got, if you had a situation like that, and it's, Warner Brothers might be like, I don't want Batman to be hanging out with the characters from Up. Like, that's just super weird. And that's like going to mess with our brand, right?
For sure.
But if you're putting it in let's say a Warner Brothers park, right? Go back to like the Great Movie Ride. The Great Movie Ride existed because it was MGM, which was the original studio that helped launch Disney's Hollywood studio, right? Before they dropped it. So
yeah, for sure.
Good. Another interesting aspect I want to ask you guys about too is some of us that went to IAPA were kind of enamored by the Dream Tunnel technology in there. And at one point that was how we were going to do that portal. So did you guys take that out, or did you, was there still a thought to use that, or was that too complicated or didn't work?
I just think for the limited time from switching from our first concept of the actual ride, it was just easier to then have, I guess, instead of using the Dream Tunnel kind of effect where we have projector screens everywhere, really changing the effect to just having a portal between each room, which then can, which you could darken really quickly and, push them through that.
And in addition, just using like a portal like boundary like that also makes for those quicker transitions between scenes so we don't lose the momentum.
Yeah, good call on that.
Yeah, just the bits behind the scenes with this team, we went through all kinds of different versions of using the Dream Tunnel. And then after feedback last week, why do we need a Dream Tunnel, and just different ways of reusing it or not using it or having multiple Dream Tunnels. And then also the IP, writing the story was a huge, we spent a couple weeks just hashing that out, because it's like, what's this big idea and how the heck are we going to bring in all of these different IPs to have this make any sense at all, like all in a big pile here. So I think it came together really well and does make sense. So I think it was, hope you enjoyed the challenging process of figuring that out.
Could you talk a little bit more about the portal, right? Like, I'm just curious. I was a little bit confused. Obviously, I see the imagery, right? The imagery that's behind you. But can you talk a little bit more about how that plays out? Because obviously that's important to understand the transition between scenes from IP to IP. with also the music changes as well. So
Come on, George. I know you got something in your head, dude.
Right. So like the first part was kind of like, I think Izzy hit on it, like with our main thing of just basically using the Animaniacs as they are, where they are the Warner Brothers lot and they run through all these different Warner Brothers things, but we knew we needed to create some type of way for that to physically happen, rather than just a lot tour where it's like, okay, you're on the lot, they can just go wherever the heck they want. So we created this portal effect, which was allowing them to go from world to world rather, and be able to go into each TV series. And that's kind of where we used the portal effect of just the I guess transportation aspect of it to get from each IP to IP, rather than just doing the basic lot kind of imagery.
And one of the like original concepts, if you're familiar with the Fairly Odd Parents, they have that Channel Chasers episode where they're like, you know, clicking through the channels and going into different TV shows. So that was where the concept originated for the portal. And then it just got changed a little bit to where we are now.
I think something really cool, and for those of you who have been to Disney and been on like the Pirates of the Caribbean, where they have the cold roll coming out of the ceiling and they're projecting on that cold roll, that might be a pretty good kind of AR/projection mapping/portal quick transition, between your different portals. So just a thought there.
Yeah, I was thinking that exact same thing, Mark, with like our original idea of how you get from scene to scene, going through a doorway in a sense, but covering it.
Yeah, for sure. And you could even do, obviously not to do it in every single one, but those that have been on Rise of the Resistance, when you're in the one room where the black dude is cutting through the wall, and then the wall just kind of opens up. You could have a similar thing where the portal's projected and the wall behind it could just move out of the way too. Darth Maul, that's it. Brain fart.
I know that in some of our story discussions discussing what that portal could look like, we referenced the older and, in my opinion, better test track with the crash test wall breaking onto the speed area.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Students, do you have questions?
how do you guys feel? I mean, do you feel like, obviously I'm hoping you feel accomplished, like end of the semester, but now that your official presentation's done, is there anything that you would do differently, or?
I wish we had about 2 more months to work on it.
Yeah.
A lot.
I wish we'd gotten,
Yeah.
I wish we'd gotten a more solid concept of like what exactly we were doing for the story a couple weeks earlier. Because I think in our discussions of if we were doing the backlot, if we were doing this for Channel Chaser, time we could have used developing whatever the concept was.
And then our man behind the curtain who can't show up, Alec, could make amazing artwork a lot faster.
And last week we had Kara had made like a full ride through on SketchUp and things like that. And then we changed the layout completely. So she just didn't have time between last week and this week to make a whole new ride through. So I feel like just having that extra time would have allowed for a lot more cool stuff.
I would still
Yeah,
love to see. I would still love to see that.
It wasn't perfect. It's still like the one I had last week wasn't
It's
what I
still
wanted
good.
it to
You
be
should
either.
still
But
show it.
I
Summer
know.
project.
Literally, I think 2 days ago, I came up with an audio track for the entire thing. And I have thought of it earlier and I had more time, I would have perfected it more. So it could have transitioned a lot smoother and you could have actually heard it, because it was like quite a bit of audio tracks that I experimented with.
I know, and last second I even thought about just reaching out to the actual actors for like the Animaniacs, because I know how fun they are. We could have asked them to like just have an MP3 of just one line that we create.
That'd have been fun.
That would have been awesome.
Have them do an intro for you guys or something. That would have been cool. You have to do that for your next Animaniacs ride. Anything else? Now's your time to ask for a SpaceX internship over the summer if you still need something to do.
I know. I was gonna say congrats on the what was it, like the fastest launch or something like that?
Yeah, 3 weeks from drop to refurb to back up.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I appreciate y'all. I thought we had a fun time. We got a nice end product. Hopefully you all feel like you got something individual to put in your portfolios that will help sell yourself for those future jobs. And that honestly, that struggle, like through the experience of coming up with something. I mean, I learned in sitting in Chris's invention class that there's a lot of failure and trial and error and honestly like blood, sweat, and tears to get through it. But it's always a learning process, and there will be parts of it you'll improve upon the next time and know not to do and things to do and that type of stuff. So hopefully you found it all very valuable.
Yeah, great job, everybody.
Well done, all. Hopefully we get to see you all in the fall for 407 for those of you that